This is PJ Souls, and you are totally listening to Without Your Head Horror Radio.
Hey, guys, this is Tom Matthews, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com. Stay tuned.
All right, and we're back once again, and now we are joined by the writer, the producer, the co-director, and he's also the co-star of Brutal. We have Michael Patrick Stevens on the line. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Neil?
I'm doing well. Now, first of all, I went over this. The writer, the producer, the co-director, co-star. Why did you decide to be so involved?
Yeah, it's quite a mouthful, isn't it?
Just want all the titles.
Yeah, well, more out of necessity than anything. I wrote the script, and I wanted this to be my directing debut because I had written a couple other scripts I had offers on with much higher budgets, but they wouldn't let me direct because I hadn't directed before. So I simply just wanted to do a lower budget film that I could direct and show everybody what I did. So, writing, directing, and I ended up producing it so that I could make sure that, I worked with the people that I wanted and put my crew together, and off we went. So I actually did not plan on playing Brutal. My friend Steve Whitaker, who wrote the title song, This Thing That I've Become, which plays during the trailer and at the end credits, and he did a fabulous job, by the way. He's a bodybuilder, and a natural bodybuilder, and I was going to have him play Brutal. He's got a really deep voice, just an intimidating presence, taller than I am, and I'm 6'3", so he's 6'4". But about a week before, he couldn't get the time off of work. So, and everybody had been saying, you should do it, but I just wanted to focus on my directing because that's where my real passion is. But I did find as we were going through the process that I enjoyed acting quite a bit. I'm 43 years old. I've been a foster parent for 15 years. I don't have any, ego to, fill, so I wasn't trying to write, produce, direct, act. Ooh, it's about me. I just wanted to make my film the way that I wanted to make it, and not have all the stipulations that had been put on me before, not directing being one, and also changing a lot of my story. I didn't want to go for that. So anyway, that's how I ended up doing it all. Wouldn't recommend it, I'll tell you that.
What would you say was the hardest role of all those, or just the fact that you were doing all those things?
It's a combination of everything. I would not suggest, and a lot of people told me not to co-direct. If you were going to do it, bite the bullet, do it yourself. I didn't want to mess up my first film, but that's very difficult. So if you want to go for your own complete vision, then you need to absolutely do it yourself. The whole thing was very difficult. It was a complete whirlwind, as I'm sure you can imagine. From the moment I had the idea for the script, I realized after my fourth deal that I was not going to get, the $5 to $12 million budgets I had been offered before to do my other script, The Haunted Caves, and its sequel, Sabi Island, which had been a graphic novel and done really well at Comic-Con. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. So, I just went forward and put everybody together. But the moment I had the idea, I pitched it, got the money, had to write the script in 21 days. Took me 23, so I was 2 days behind. Put everything together off of Facebook. Hadn't met one person. And that's why I met Michael Baldwin and everybody else. The only person that I did know prior was Alan. So I was thrilled he was on board, and Michael had been a childhood hero of mine from Phantasm. So having those two on my corner gave me a lot of confidence. But, from the moment I had the concept to writing the script to getting the crew together to the shoot being done was 3 months and 1 week. And I think that's got to be some kind of record. I'm not sure, but that's pretty fast for a feature film, I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm. Now, who did this? Who did the makeup and the special effects? Because I thought they were all really well done.
Oh, Christine, Cordum. She is also does the special effects on the TV show Grimm. She was absolutely fantastic. I mean, obviously professionally, because like you just commented, her work was incredible. Completely sold the brutality and the reality of the film. And on top of that, she was just a wonderful person. We all fell in love with her. She made you feel good all day. And, that's quoting Michael Baldwin, and I couldn't agree with him more. She was a fabulous, fabulous person to have on set, and I'm just so grateful that she was there.
Mm-hmm.
And plan on working with her again. So, wonderful, wonderful lady.
Now, did you get into contact with her on Facebook too, or is it someone you knew?
I had contacted her, but my co-producer Kent Luttrell, who had he had contacted her, and the co-director had contacted her. Kent knew her because he had done some work on Grimm too. So all three of us were going at her from different angles, and she just finally came on board like 2 or 3 days before the film because she was so swamped and so in demand. And then there were 2 days she had her assistants there. She couldn't be there, but left perfect instructions. And so I just thank God she came through at the last second, because we would have really been in a pinch, and it would have been a completely different movie.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said you originally had someone else, in mind to play the part you did, Brutal. Did the role change at all when you took over it, or since you kind of wrote it, maybe you kind of thought maybe you would play it at some point, or?
Well, I had originally, had him being this muscle-bound, individual like Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And I am, I have a lot more girth than Steve. So I went and, the costume in my mind changed, yes, because I wasn't going to put the audience through seeing me, with my shirt off or partial shirt off with the overalls and all that. So that did change a little bit, yes, visually.
Mm-hmm. Annabelle, do you have a question?
Sorry, you keep catching me off guard, man.
I'm sorry. No, well, along your lines, did you always have the clear mask picked out? Because I like that. I actually used to have masks like that when I was a kid.
No, I've actually got a bunch of pictures. We went through a whole bunch of different masks. Bought quite a few of them. Was trying to come up with something unique and original. And that was the co-director, Darla Ray. We had talked about, having a clear mask or a porcelain mask. It was my idea to have the partial mask. So she found the whole mask, and I had them cut the bottom out. But, we were trying different things. Some industrial masks, some that hadn't been done before. That would be memorable, and kind of have like a twisted, which is what I think came off great with that clear mask. You just, also like kind of stalking somebody's twisted features also represents kind of their twisted soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really happy with that in the end.
Now, all the different torture devices and things, were these all things you thought of when you were writing it, or was some of it like in your mind, throughout the years that if you ever got a chance to make a movie or whatnot, you'd like to include this?
No, that all just came up at the last second. Except for the potato peeler. That has been in my mind for a number of years because I've never seen anybody use a potato peeler on somebody in a movie. So,
I was wondering, because a hobby of mine is to sit around and think of different torture devices. So,
Oh, well, no, that's, I'm really not a horror film person. I love the first Halloween. There's not one drop of blood in it because it's just a fabulous movie. I don't even really consider it a horror film. And then the original Phantasm, which if everybody focuses on the yellow blood and the fingers getting cut off and the spear sucking the blood out of the guy's head, what I always related to was the relationship between the two brothers, which to me was the heart of the movie, and Michael Baldwin was the heart of that relationship. Mm-hmm. And, so to me there was a much deeper meaning there. So, but when I was decided I needed to do a low budget, it's like, okay, what costs money? Locations and, certainly time shooting. So I'm like, well, if I can keep it mostly in a basement But then how do you keep that interesting? How do you, have the dialogue between two people last so long? And I like twists and turns, and I don't like just flat-out slasher movies. So to me, it had to be unique and original, and, I was very fortunate to, in my opinion, I'm very pleased with what I came up with so quickly, and so happy that everybody responded so well to it.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
I was awfully nervous, let me tell you. I mean, I sent it to Michael Baldwin, and he's like, I've read so many scripts, and it's hard for me to get past page 10, so I'm just sitting there kind of sweating it out, hoping he'll do it, and hoping, he would want to get on board, and, he wrote me and said he couldn't put it down, and it was great, and he sent me a few notes, which were very good, but, for basically a first draft that went almost to a shooting script, it was, I'm very proud of it.
Mm-hmm. What's that like for you, though? I mean, you were a childhood fan of the movie, grew up really liking it, then you actually get, the star, the lead of Phantasm in this movie that you found, your first movie you get to make. I mean, what's that like whole process, and to see it actually, come to be?
Well, it was surreal to me. I mean, I'll tell you, when I first, I don't get starstruck. I've worked with developmentally disabled children, survivors of abuse. I've seen the ugliest things, life has to offer. So I can switch hats real quick, though. So, on one hand, when you just look at him as a human being and you talk to him, that's fine. Like, we're friends now. I talk to him, and no problem. But then when I put my Phantasm hat on, I get, same with Alan, the Halloween, I'm like, I'm just blown away. So, especially Phantasm, because, I had came from a broken home and a tough childhood, and I found that movie at the exact moment that I needed to. And I drew a lot of strength off of that character, and, we all have movies in one way or another that we relate to that way. And I literally, in my own personal life, borrowed a lot of things from that film to strengthen myself and to get through certain situations. And, so I have a much more in-depth relationship with that character than probably normal. And we all know how things from childhood impact us and stay with us. So then getting to know him and then realizing he's not that character, it took me a little bit to separate the two, but not very long. And, getting to know him, the person. But I'll tell you, when I put in the friend request on Facebook, I don't get like this with many people. I was sitting there for about 3 days, and I'm like, is he going to answer? Is he going to answer? And boy, when he did, I felt like I'd won the lottery, and that was just to become his friend. So then I just thought, I'm going to go for it. So I typed him an email and just told him what the movie and he had meant to me, and what I did for a living. So I wasn't a kook, because I had no doubt he's going to do a few of those. And he wrote me back and was really appreciative and liked the fact that I had a more in-depth feeling towards the film and his character, and we hit it off right away. And it was really nice. So while I'm standing there in front of him, to go through that process, to then have him read my script, to then have him agree to do my film, it was just one unbelievable thing to me after another. And Phantasm and Halloween, in my opinion, are the two horror films that set the standards in 78, 79, although in 60 there was Psycho, of course. But I had two people, involved in these two franchises that were my childhood heroes, because I'm also a musician and I totally related with Alan on another level. And here they are working on my first film. I couldn't, it was really a joy, and then I had some real moments where I was totally myself and into the job and being professional, but then just for a moment, I'd be like, I'm about to do a take with Michael Baldwin, I just was like, over the moon, but then I was worried I was going to hurt him. So it was really surreal, because, my hands were all full of blood, and I, have a sander a half an inch from his leg and slipping, and the same thing with, a lot of the things that could have gone wrong, and thank goodness they didn't. Mm-hmm. But it was unbelievable to me. I'll never forget the experience, and I'm just so grateful.
You said you had the sander, and you could have gone. Was it like a live sander?
It was live, man. Everything was live. Everything was live. And when I don't want to give away too much of the movie, but when I hit him in the face, we did a take where obviously he just broke with it and I didn't hit him. And it didn't work. We played it back. We looked at it. It just didn't work. So he said, okay, all right, go ahead and hit me. Give me about 30%. Don't knock out any teeth, and I'll break with it. So when I hit him, I mean, that's a real smack. And he took it like a champ. And, of course, in the movie, it just looks like I'm this ferocious monster pounding on this guy. And the whole time I'm sitting there worried I'm going to hurt him. So, I have a completely different experience watching the film, obviously, than anybody else will.
Mm-hmm. Annabelle, do you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned that you're not really a horror guy, but you were compelled to make this movie. Did you make this movie hoping it would kind of launch you so you can get into some other filmmaking projects? Because it's obvious that you're really passionate about getting into filmmaking. So where are you hoping this will go?
Yes, well, like I said, I had 4 deals to make my previous script, The Haunted Cave, and the sequel, Saw the Island, and those are my babies. And I'm a very good collaborator, but I'm just not into people that want to, destroy my vision. If you're on board with me and you want to add to it, that's great. Basically, I wrote them to be PG-13. I wrote them for my best friend, so there's a lot of personal meaning there. He was born deformed and handicapped, and he did not have a wheelchair till he was 14.
Oh, wow.
So I carried him everywhere.
Wow.
So, and our favorite thing to do was to go through the Haunted Caves, haunted house, every year in Hillsboro, Oregon, and I'd carry him through it. So I love, like, the Silence of the Lambs, and that's horrific. You're cutting off people's faces, you're gutting people, but I don't consider that a horror film. Same with Halloween, same with Phantasm, because there's so much character depth. I guess I should say I'm not a slasher film person.
Yeah.
I'm fine with blood and guts, but I like intrigue, I like mystery, and the Haunted Caves is full of that. So, again, just being a closet writer and being up in Beaverton, Oregon, with all these foster kids. Rick almost died, my best friend, so I wrote it for him. Obviously, the tie-in is that was our haunted house, and I just thought, how fantastic a movie would this make. I wanted to try and keep him going, because we always, when we were younger, they could touch you. Now nobody touches you because of the lawsuit. But if you didn't come out with a bloody nose or a black eye, you didn't have a good time. and I mean, we got, the piss pounded out of us, and we loved every minute of it. So, anyway, that's, so again, there's blood and guts and mayhem in my other films, but there's no sex scenes. There's a lot of character development. If you read my FearNet review about the graphic novel on my website, they were very, very impressed on the depth of character development, more so than in these types of movies. And to me, that's true horror. The camera pans over, 2 people are having sex in a car, she rolls off and they light a joint, Jason steps out or whoever, I don't know if I can name anybody, but they kill them, and I personally don't really care because I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
But if you spend time with people and you get to know them, then by the time they get stuck in a dangerous situation, you're mortified because that's true terror.
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of stuff that I like. So that's what I wrote, and everybody responded extremely well to it.
Yeah.
And, so I guess I'm not a slasher movie type of person, but they, a couple people were like, oh, you've got to put sex scenes in this. That's the proven formula. That would not work. It would be totally out of character with these people in the situation. Not that they're crude, not that they're boring, but they just didn't have a place in the story.
Yeah.
And FearNet totally got that, and that review, I was very pleased with because, they understood what I was going for.
Yeah, some real psychological depth.
Yes.
And I'm not really sure I want to see the sex scene between you and Michael Baldwin.
I had written for him to be strapped in the chair naked, And that, you know, you wouldn't have seen his private parts or anything. Mm-hmm. But to me, that would even make him more vulnerable.
Yeah,
and, you know, and he was like, nah, I'm not getting naked. You know? and you know what? In the end, it ended up being better because he would have had to do that and be naked, and that would have been a little bit weird. So, I mean, the guy is my childhood hero. Now he's one of my super duper great friends. Mm-hmm. But to me, the grossest part of the movie, just mm-hmm. one other little thing I'll give away, was nothing to do with the blood and guts. We shared a drink out of the same bottle. So when he was, you know, desperately trying to get some water, when I was holding it up to him, you know, just being the character, his tongue went in the bottle. So I had to drink after him, and I almost didn't make it, but I got through the shot. So, because I was kind of a germaphobe. So, to me, that's the most horrific part of the movie. You know? I love you, Michael. I love you, but I don't want to swap spit with you, man. You know?
I don't want to give away the big twist of the movie or anything like that, but I actually watched it the second time today, and like a lot of movies that have twists, it's really interesting to watch a second time because you get to pick up on a lot of little hints at things that happen later on, and different. When you know what happens and then you watch it again, you can pick up on things that you put in earlier in the film, and I think it's really interesting.
Well, yeah, I wanted it to be, I mean, I want to do my own thing originally. I don't want to be compared to anybody, but I will say it's like, you know, I mean, let's say The Sixth Sense, where you go back and watch it, even though it's not like Sixth Sense. Yeah, Fight Club, good example. It's a completely different movie the second time around. Yeah, completely different.
It's like when you know how a magic trick works. And then you see how it's revealed and how the puzzle unfolds.
Right. And I don't know what you thought of it watching it a second time. I think the first time with the twists and turns would end up being the most enjoyable. But I think that there'd be a lot of interest in watching it a second time because you get a completely different experience.
Yeah,
and a completely different perspective. Mm-hmm. So even though the twists and turns don't shock and surprise you, you're still like, oh, wait, I see that from a completely different point of view, and that's interesting. And a lot of movies you just can't watch a second time, let alone even a first time.
Right. Yeah, exactly right, because there was things that, the first time I watched it, it's like, you might not pay attention to certain details, but then when you watch it a second time, those details really stand out as, part of the whole overall plot.
Yeah.
Annabelle, do you have another question?
Yeah, I have a little bit more. You say, you had like a rough history, and you've worked with foster kids. I've worked with kids in adolescent residential and know kind of how things go for a lot of those kids. Those experiences, how do they add to your filmmaking? And do you feel like this is a pretty intense, rough movie at times? How do you deal with the emotions that come up when you're writing and creating a story like this?
Well, first of all, my hat is off to you, because that's admirable work. I know how tough it is. And whether they live in with you or you're working in a residential facility, it's draining. And they always say, disconnect and don't take your work home. I mean, they lived with me, so I had to take my work home. But even if I've done residential care too, and it's hard, especially when you see the real heartbreaking cases.
Oh, yeah.
So, Neil had mentioned, how did you sit around and think of what you would do? I worked with some very dangerous sex offenders between the age of 15 and 21. Mm-hmm. My family's been threatened. I've been through some really interesting situations and, just kind of in a passive-aggressive way of threatening them. I would say, I'm going to get the potato peeler out, man. So that's where my potato peeler comes in. But other than that, well, because, a lot of these people do come back after certain people. Yeah. But I don't sit around fantasizing about how I'm going to kill people or what's good. But I try to put myself in the position of, okay, if somebody did do something horrific to someone I love, what would I do? How far would I go? And, I'm a real interesting case because I've never started a fight. I've always been a protector, and I think that comes from my own abuse. because I never wanted anybody to feel the way that I did. But a lot of people become abusers, you know. But at the same time, being best friends with Rick and seeing the absolute cruelty. I mean, people, you know, picking on him and, you know, bumping into him and the names they'd call him and hey, Crip. And it's so devastating that, you know, then I'd be ready to go. So I kind of, you know, I wouldn't do anything, but I know, you know, that I've got it in me to do something. And I've raised everybody else's kids, and I've just gotten married and had my first child. And to really sit and think of if somebody hurt him, there, you know, I'm not a macho guy. If you met me, I'd hug you. I'm real easygoing. But I don't think there's anything, even my belief in God, as I understand it, that could keep me. Once that mechanism kicks in, I don't think there's anything that could stop me. I just don't think there is. And I don't think there's really anything wrong with that, because people can do violent things. People have defended our country, you know, in war and gone back and raised their families and been honorable men. But when you've got, you know, some real tyranny staring you in the face or injustice, or to me, even more importantly, if somebody, and that's why I really went the extra mile to make sure, you know, I just hope to God I'm never in that situation, you know, and have to experience that. But I did have the founding members of the Victims of Violent Crimes in Portland, Oregon. They established the chapter 26 years ago, come to the set, and they were so grateful. And I mean, seriously, because, you know, this is a brutal movie, but it wasn't just so much the brutality. It was what it did to them physically when their children got murdered. And one of them, you know, was the parallels of the movie were freaky, because I'd wrote it before I'd met the lady. And, you know, just long story short, my wife's sitting here on speakerphone. She can verify. Her and her husband had planned to kill the guy, and they bought a house. Yeah, they bought a house on the hill above him. Took sniper rifle lessons. Became sharpshooters, and in the end, they just couldn't cross that bridge. And that's only because they figured that even if one of them did it, the other one would get caught, and they had 3 other kids. Yeah. So there's so much more to it about. It's not just I lost my child. It's the anger and the, you know, you got these soccer moms going to school and baking cookies and doing picnics, but they can turn into something completely different if something ferocious happens to a kid. And if they die, especially, you know, there's such a feeling of loss and the destruction inside and the bitterness and the anger. And such a long road to find peace if you ever can at all. And that's what they were blown away with by the movie. And they brought pictures of their children. They brought pictures of the murderers. I couldn't believe it. You know, one got off and the other guy got life. And just horrific how they were killed. So anyway, you know, it's been a real experience.
Was it ever hard for you to get into that mindset while you're filming the movie, to get into the character?
No. Well, see, here I'd go giving away the film. Yeah, I mean, there were moments. But again, I was so concerned for Michael Baldwin's safety and all the things I was doing to him that I didn't 100% dive into the character because I was so concerned about safety. So thank God, because I really wouldn't want to go there if I didn't have to. And I mean, I was certainly there during the take, but then, you know, right before, right after, you know, it was gone. It wasn't anything that hung with me, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you... What was that?
I was going to say, if you watch the behind-the-scenes featurette that's on my website, at thedockinternationalfilms.com, you'll see Michael Baldwin and I interacting. I'm smiling. I'm always smiling. I'm always happy, you know. So to see brutal compared to who I really am I didn't. It didn't stay with me.
Yeah,
you know.
I actually brought this up to him because I didn't know it was the same person when he first contacted me, because you look so much different than you do in the movie.
Yes, well, that's
a good thing. That's good.
Yeah, it is.
If you contacted me and you were, this big guy covered in blood and a mask, I'm like, what's going on?
Well, I will tell you that after shooting one day, certain scenes we filmed at one house. I don't want to give it away. Other scenes, the basement scenes, we filmed at another house that were kitty cornered to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I was staying over at the other house, so I would cross the street. Well, I passed people every day for over a week, covered in blood, just, looked like an atrocity. And nobody ever called the cops. Nobody did anything until the second to the last day when the mailman saw me and he called the police, said this huge guy covered in blood just came out of this house. And anyway, 3 cop cars showed up, a canine unit. They surrounded the house. I wasn't there. The poor guy that owned the house was there. And anyway, it was real interesting. So that all turned out okay, but he had to show him the script. I mean, it was quite a process for him to... but I'm glad I wasn't there. They'd have pulled all their guns out, and I'd been like, wait a minute.
Now, I'm a big fan of the wheel in the movie.
Okay.
Now, each one of those things on the wheel, did you film any of those that they might not have clicked on or thought about filming? Any of those that you didn't click on?
Yes, but, there's only so much, I think, torture that somebody can handle.
Right.
And meaning the audience. And I think what we gave them was plenty, and that's why, and also time and effects being a cost. I mean, some of the things I came up with were fantastic, but and just absolutely gruesome, and again, never seen in a film, which is big for me. I hate when you just see the same thing over and over. But when we sat down with and broke down the budget for each effect, I mean, one of them was $2,500. So I actually had a power drill that was going to drill through the lens of his glass, go into his eye, and pull his eyeball out. So, that was one of them. So we'll stop with that one. My wife's chuckling. But I had some pretty vicious stuff, but I think what they had is good enough. And I think that, honestly, in retrospect, would have been over the top. Especially considering where the movie went. So I just think it was divine intervention and everything worked out the way it was supposed to. And it wasn't so far gone that it was unbelievable that the movie went to where it did. If you know what I mean. I don't want to say anymore, but, that's why the wheel spinning was, it'd land and then you'd cut away and it'd be like, that's why he'd be such a bloody mess, because I'd show you one thing, but then, as you noticed, it'd land on 2 or 3 others. But, I wasn't going to show all that. So he just got progressively bloodier and messed up as it went.
You mentioned your wife a couple times. What was her thoughts on the movie when she saw it, or did she see it?
Have you seen it, honey?
Yeah. Too many times.
I don't think she's actually sat down and watched the whole thing. And to be honest with you, my wife is a very loving, wonderful soul and didn't understand why I was writing it in the beginning. She has no interest in the movie business, and is very active at church and in her community and doing volunteer work. And so here I am writing this, brutal film, but to me, that was only a part of it that really did establish more of the character, but the rest of it to me is all story. So I wasn't focused on the violence. I was focused on everything else that you already know is in the film. So as it started to unfold, she started to get that more and more. And my father was the same way. because, you know, I mean, I've been writing songs for a long time. I've written 12 children's books. I got my first one coming out in November. I've had 2 published now, and the second one's coming out in April. So it's like, you know, you write all this really nice, beautiful, cute stuff. What are you doing this for? And I said, well, you know, I mean, they understood the Haunted Caves because the way it was written, even though it is terrifying and bloody, is PG-13, and it's really kind of the ultimate, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's, good versus evil, which, you know, is always kind of stand up on your feet and cheer for it type of thing, not just the graphic violence. But this one is obviously violent. I mean, this one obviously is rated R. This one is pretty brutal. But as the story unfolded, they really got behind it. And, you know, now they see, especially when the founding members of the Victims of Violent Crimes came out, they hugged me and they were both bawling and they wouldn't let go of me. It was the most unbelievable experience to have that kind of support because I'd written something from their point of view. And they didn't mind at all about the violence because they had all those thoughts themselves. So they just didn't carry it out. So, right now where we stand, everybody's completely supportive and very proud of me. But there were some real moments where they weren't sure what I was doing, you know.
Now, I won't give it away, but there's a couple scenes in the movie that I actually asked this earlier to Michael, and he told me to ask you. I thought maybe it was supposed to kind of look like kind of a Christ figure at one point. Is that in the movie at all, or is it just something I kind of dreamt up? Kind of like the scar on the head, and then almost like the kind of thought made me think of Crown of Thorns, and then also with the nails, kind of made me think of crucifixion.
Oh well, you know, a couple other people had thought of that, and that was not even a thought in my mind. To be honest with you, my thought was, I mean, here the guy's tied to the chair, he's chained to the chair, he's handcuffed to the chair, he's really completely bound. But how's he going to get out? How's he going to escape? So to take that a step further, you know, you throw that gag in there, and then you're like, oh my God, you know, he ain't going anywhere. I mean, this guy's done. But then it's like, well, there's got to be more stories, so I got to hang in there and see. So, no, I didn't think of that at all. Mm-hmm. But I've had the same comments a few times about the Crown of Thorns. I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Now, any progress in getting distributed for the film?
Well, we've had offers. We just won Most Terrifying Film at the Crypticon Film Festival. So that's in Kansas, and Michael will be there, and I'll be there, and he'll be introducing the film, and then him and I are going to do a Q&A afterwards. So I don't want him introducing me first because I don't want him to see this, you know, big, nice, likable, bloody guy, which is really what I am, because then I'm afraid they won't be afraid of me in the film, and I want them to be. So then they'll all come out after the film. And then that's on Friday night, the 23rd. And then Friday, the 25th, the president of Rue Morgue was so impressed with it that they're going to, they made a slot for it at Rue Morgue, you know, which is huge in Toronto. So I'll be going up there. So, you know, we've got distributors interested, and I've never been down this road before. And I have had some offers, some money up front, some no money up front, bigger percentage on the back end, but I've heard a lot of horror stories about distributors. I'm sure there's some good, honest ones out there. But I'm also thinking of self-distributing. I have met some people that would financially back me in that. Alan has been talking to, and I have been talking to also Regal for a theatrical release, also Rave Cinemas for a smaller theatrical release. So we're kind of seeing where it's going to go, but we're running out of time because it'd be nice to make Halloween. But in the end, I may end up just doing it myself or just selling it on DVD, because theatrical is a real pain. I mean, everybody wants that, but I just want to make films, you know. I'm not going to sell my mother and swap everything I have to make it in this business. I mean, I love movies. I always have. They were a form of escape for me through my troubled situation as a child. I really connect to them. They really move me. But I'd rather just do it the way I want to do it or not do it. And that's not from an egotistical, I know best point of view. It's just I'm 43 years old. Life is short. I don't want to play a bunch of games with people, So anyway, we'll see what happens. I mean, hopefully the right people will be brought into my space and it'll all fall together.
You mentioned a few times about troubled childhood. Did you want to expand on that, or would you rather just leave it at that?
Basically what I said before, I'll just leave it with, my folks got divorced and we were a more well-to-do family. My father was very successful building mobile home parks and the vice president of a wholesale distributing company. And, so, I mean, we lived in a nice neighborhood, and I was the first person anybody had ever heard of to have a pinball machine and a shuffleboard table. I had such a wonderful life, and my father was so wonderful that when everything went to pot and my parents got divorced, that's what made it so tough, because I'd had it so good, and then, certain people came into my life and it just wasn't a good situation at all. So, I'll pretty much leave it at that, but I thank God for my best friend Rick and learning that compassion, because I had been putting his shoes on, since I can remember, and helping him and taking care of him. And people used to come up to me and go, "Oh, you're such a nice guy," or "Is he your brother?" And really, the honest to God truth, I'm not boasting about myself at all. I am the lucky one. I am the privileged one. He taught me so much. And when you're best friends with somebody and you don't have to cross those boundaries of dressing somebody, bathing somebody, putting their shoes on, it brings you so much closer. And when you see other people teasing them and picking on them, for me, it was quite, I couldn't understand it, because I was very lucky to see the person that was there and not his deformity, and so I never wanted to make anybody feel. I was certainly angry. I mean, especially when I got later on, and these people, to this day are nervous, because I'm a big guy, man, and I'm tough and I'm strong, and they still know they got it coming, and I've made that clear to them, but they're in hiding, basically. and I wish I could have a relationship, but they're just not capable of doing that. So I just never wanted to, and it's not that I would do anything. It's just, I think that the guilt has eaten them up, and, I'm not sure, but I just want to help people. My door is always open if somebody's willing to, apologize, and all those apologies have been made. I want to make that clear, but it's just easier for them to kind of hide off into their world, I think, because it was very dramatic, So I personally could not ever live with doing something like that to someone. I don't even like being rude to somebody, or So I don't know how they live with what they've done, but so maybe that's why they live the way they do now. I don't know. But anyway, it just made me more of a protector, totally, instead of an abuser, and I think you go either way when you go through that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've seen several reviews of the film, all have been really positive. The people that you've shown it to and the reviews, what has been everyone's response been? Well,
it's everything has been incredible so far. I've had some from some real filmmakers and some distributors that I've met that are cool and honest. We didn't have a lot of time. We didn't have a lot of money. I have received quite a bit of positive, constructive, negative, if that makes sense, criticism on quite a few of the shots. But at the same time, they've told me that the story is so incredible and nothing they've ever seen, and that Michael's performance is so unbelievable, and that it's just compelling that they made allowances for lack of direction or lack of, shot or lighting. So, I mean, I'm open to anything. I mean, I'm not, I'm no Spielberg. I'm learning as I go. I've never been behind a camera in my life or, and again, certainly co-directing, having differences of opinions and things like that. So, I'm open to everything. I've been really surprised at everyone's reactions about my performance. Seriously, because, I've always struggled with self-esteem, and it's been very nice to hear the compliments people have given me. But it's weird, watching yourself or hearing your own voice. I've never liked my voice. And I'm so, focused on Michael Baldwin and his incredible performance. If I would have gotten somebody else that did a very weak job, and what he had to do, it's amazing what he did. And I believe that makes me look so much better. And if I would have had somebody that couldn't have carried that role, then it would have made me look worse, by far worse. So I think that, his acting made me look by far better because he's just so dynamic in the part.
Mm-hmm. And again, the website itself is brutalmovie.net. And if anybody wanted to contact you, how would they go about that? Go on the website, or would you want to contact you on Facebook?
Oh, they can contact me on Facebook, or they can contact me at ZadokInternationalFilms.com. My phone number and my email address is on there. So that's a good way to get a hold of me.
Yeah, we'll put that up on the website. Well, I'll put your number up there. We'll put the information how to contact you there. But,
okay.
We really want to thank you for coming on.
I really want to thank you for having me. Thank you for having Michael and Alan and letting the whole crew come on. I was stuck in traffic, so I didn't get to hear what they said, but as a fan of both of them, I can't wait. And I'm just very, very appreciative of you giving us the time. Thank you very much. And for your interest and your compliments.
Yeah, and thank you for hooking everybody up. And I really think everyone should, seek out the movie, and wish you all the luck in getting it, out there for everyone to see.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Cool.
This is Kyle Gass of Tenacious D. You're listening to Without Your Head.
All right, this is Julian Nitzberg on WithoutYourHead.com, and I think they're talking about the head of your penis, as far as I understand.